Good morning, guys. Welcome to my Compound Life. I am Jonathan. This is a channel where we build assets, we build habits, and of course, we build freedom that will really be financial freedom, time freedom for you and me and anyone else that watches my video. So thanks for watching. At the time of recording, it is around 9:40 a.m. in the morning on the January 27th of 2026. So I'm in the UK in the West Midlands. So good morning if you're my UK viewers. Good afternoon if you are the Asia viewers. And of course, good evening or good night or good morning for the American viewers. Okay, so please drop a like, hit subscribe. I produce Bitcoin related video almost on a daily basis. So if you like Bitcoin, you like to keep up with whatever's going on in the news, and at the same time, if you like to keep up with personal finance, etc., I talk about that on my video too, right? So let me know in the comment section where you guys are watching from. It's always great to hear from all of you guys. And by the way, please be reminded, I know many of you guys are excited about my video whenever I talk about DCA leading onto financial freedom, yada, yada, yada. It always results in some of you guys leaving in the comment to let everyone else in the world to know how many Bitcoins you guys have. So please don't do that. Okay, so I usually end up having to go in and delete that comment. So please don't be offended if I have deleted your comment. It's just to make sure that, you know what, you don't talk about, we talk about wealth, but we don't talk about too much of it, just in case. Okay, so leave me the comment, and yeah, always great to hear from all of you guys. So let's start off today's video looking at the price action, the depressing price action for Bitcoin, and when everything else are just pumping up like no tomorrow. Okay, so price action. Right now, Bitcoin is at around 87,885. So in the past 24 hours, it went up a small, I think 0.5%, starting from around 87,800, hitting a high near 88,500 and low around 87,500. We are, however, still 30% so far away from the previous all-time high that was back in October last year at around 126,000. So Bitcoin obviously is showing some resilience here, right? Whenever it drops to about 86,000, it immediately bounced back. So holding above that 86,000 support, right? So this essentially, I think it's kind of like a support. So it's consolidating in a tight range right now. If we're looking at the 4 hours chart, I think whenever Bitcoin kind of, consolidate in a very tight range, some sort of a big move will happen soon. Okay, but will that move be to the upside or to the downside? We never know, right? But once I kind of get through the news section later, I think it could mean more downside, probably. Right? I'm just thinking out loud, right? Don't shoot me. No major breakout yet, as you can see. Of course, I think price definitely did improve a little bit after the Sunday afternoon UK time dipped. But the price is compressing with higher lows from buyers stepping in and lower highs from seller pushing back. So this squeeze in volatility usually leads to big expansion soon, So we'll see how that all goes. But something to take note of, I think Bitcoin at around $85,000 to $88,000 at this zone, there'll be plenty of buyers piling in their buy orders. So it's a good thing, hopefully that 85, 86 kind of support will continue to be a key support for us so that, Bitcoin doesn't drop to 70,000 that quickly. Some of you out there will be excited to hear about this, but of course, some of you that loves to DCA, that still have some money on the sideline, I'm sure, you want it to drop further, but that's fine. 85,000 support, it's good enough. Okay, for now, right? Especially, there could be a business cycle, ISM business cycle, banana zone in the horizon. Holding this for a slightly longer period of time will always be good because it brings us quicker back into the 20 days moving average, which will be around 100,000, right? Not 20 days, the 200 days moving average, we will be about 100,000. Okay, so bear that in mind. But of course, there are also a lot of chat about bear flags. So you will see plenty of this chart on social media that says, hey, this is the movement, this essentially is a bear flag. These are like the period when we should just stay calm and wait and not look at technical analysis too much, because I think now it's the macros driving the narratives essentially, right? So this is just more of a FYI. Usually when bear flags form, the likelihood or the probability of the Bitcoin price moving next will be more downwards movement. Okay, so bear that in mind. So my honest read of the whole situation of what's going on, we in a decision zone again after the recent pullback on Sunday, right? If we look at the chart on TradingView, like Sunday, we've been staying in this zone for quite some time, right? And then on a Sunday, I think all related to the Japanese carry trade unwind, could also be related to, I don't know, market makers taking out leverage longs or algorithmic trading on key headlines. So immediately Bitcoin decided to dip, right? That was a pretty fast dip. And of course, I think we broke this zone. However, we're trying to reclaim it back now and continue to stay in this zone, which is good. And this is kind of like the decision zone now, right? After this recent pullback. So patience is key right now, right? Watch for closes above 90,000 for bullish sign, or drops below 86,000 for more downside expectation. So bear that in mind, guys. However, when I kind of go through some of the headline and going through the timeline of what to anticipate for the coming few days or to coming few weeks, and some of the news event that essentially you kind of look through the history of that news event would probably take a few more weeks to play out, right? So to me, that feels more of a bearish expectation in the coming few weeks, as opposed to bullish upside. But that's simply my view, right? I can always be wrong. Just an internet guy that talks about Bitcoin, and most of the time I'm actually wrong. So yeah, not financial advice at all. Okay, so let's move on. I mean, of course, I have this bearish type of view. The reason a lot being because, which by the way, I think I have several viewers commented, "Hey, Jonathan, why do you always talk about November this year, 2026, being the best time to re-enter Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada," right? And which, by the way, I think I just want to showcase you guys some charts, some historical trends that kind of backed my thinking of why we are heading lower this year and why we, continuously will continue to head lower, right? So let's come back to this chart again. So this chart measure Bitcoin from low to low, okay? And it's doing this for at least the past 3 cycle, right? So at least this white line indicates Bitcoin cycle this time round, okay? And this blue one indicates Bitcoin cycle for the last cycle, and the orange one was for the previous cycle, as you can see from the time frame here, right? The white one, the blue one, and the orange one. Okay, so this measure from low to low essentially means from the Bitcoin bottom to, and then eventually you have a bull cycle for Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin gets to the top, and then this gray out zone essentially marks the Bitcoin top, right? It almost marks it as clearly and precisely. So obviously the Bitcoin top for the recent cycle, for the recent Bitcoin cycle, the Bitcoin top was sometime in October the 8th, and then immediately it starts to have that sell off. So 126,000 here for Bitcoin, and then it continued to sell off. You know what? A lot of you guys have given kind of like at least 2 weeks to sell off your Bitcoin, to take profit before it finally grinds down to about 90,000, 80,000, 70,000. And we are kind of ranging at around 86,000 now, okay? So, of course, looking at historical trends, it doesn't mean Bitcoin would drop to, whatever low, right? It usually takes some time, and there will be some positive catalysts that will cause some form of dead cat bounce, sometimes I call it, or a bounce, right? So you can see there'll be some sort of bounce on this orange line, some sort of bounce on this blue line. So this would be a good time, if you guys haven't taken profit at the top here, at this zone, at some of these bounces, it's always good to take some profit, right? And it seemed that, I think recently at 95,000 or even 97,000 earlier, it has been good time to take profit and so forth, right? So usually for Bitcoin 4-year cycle, which by the way, a lot of analysts, a lot of social media influencers are saying that the 4-year cycle has been broken, right? Until we kind of reverse and head up to another all-time high, I would still say Bitcoin cycle is not fully broken yet. And it's currently following this trajectory, which essentially means it's heading lower, right? And for this zone, that marks the Bitcoin high to get to this zone that marks the Bitcoin bottom, usually this takes about 12 months, 12 to 15 months, okay? So this is why, coming back to some of the viewer questions to say, hey, you know what, I'm kind of liquidating as much as possible right now, which, by the way, there would be different timing to liquidate, right? So the fact that the longer I stay on Bitcoin as well as crypto, especially crypto, right? Because by the time Bitcoin continue to drop, crypto will continue to drop 70, 80, 90%, right? And that's pretty frightening if you have to hold your crypto for another cycle, which means another 4 years, right? So for me, for some of my crypto holding, I've been holding for at least 2 cycles already. I did mention about Ethereum, which I'm thinking to dollar cost average exit or pound cost average to exit. For me, that makes perfect sense because I've held it for some time. I've made some good gain. Although Ethereum is not at its peak price of around 4,500, but at least it's still around 3,100, 3,200. If there could be some dead cat bounce, essentially it hints, good time to take some profits. Because I want to sell enough just so that by the time Bitcoin hit the bottom somewhere here, okay, sometime here, not somewhere here, sometime here, that will be sometime in November, right? So there are also viewers that ask me, how do we time this? Okay, so by the way, these are not at all financial advice. I'm just using what trends tells us so that I'm kind of following the rhythm. Because every asset, and somehow for Bitcoin, is an asset that's slightly easier to follow the rhythm, right? You need to follow the rhythm to roughly know when is the time for bear market, when is the time for bull market. So you want to accumulate as much money as possible just so that you can enter strongly at the bear market. Okay, so that's why I've been talking to you guys on my another stream of content, which is called Buy Bitcoin. So you're watching Bitcoin Daily now, right? But I've got another stream of content that I kind of produce video to talk about, how I look at the market right now and what I'm actually doing right now. So for that side of the stream of the video, I always emphasize that, guys, you know what, the best time to enter will be at the Bitcoin bottom, at the bear market. And that's usually you need to enter and enter strong. When you do your DCA, you need to place more emphasis on that sort of dollar cost average so that you can fully capitalize more during that bear market and accumulate more Bitcoin, right? So again, looking at this chart, right? So I also emphasize that 500 days before the next Bitcoin halving event is actually the best time to buy more Bitcoin, right? And if that's the case, I would simply focus on the first 100 day or 200 days to get into DCA on steroids, right? So imagine if you got £10,000 or $10,000 that you want to put into Bitcoin for the next cycle, right? Maybe separate where $5,000 you save that to buy the dips, right? The major dips. The other $5,000 you just set aside and say, I'm going to commit this $5,000 on a daily basis for the next 100 to 200 days and do a buy equally for every single day, right? If it dips, great. You buy the same amount for that portion of $5,000. If it goes up, it's fine. It's DCA. There will be ups and downs. You continue to DCA and get into that market for that 200 days. Okay, so this is why sometimes I said 500 days before the actual halving, right? So as you can see on this chart, I cannot point, I want to point, but I cannot, right? So as you can see from my mouse, this 0 here marks that Bitcoin halving event, right? So you want to buy as much Bitcoin during these 500 days. However, right now, you need to start to save your money just so that you can go max, right? Go in max at DCA in the 100 or 200 days, just so you can buy more Bitcoin, because usually this marks Bitcoin bottom. So this graph really measures where the Bitcoin price are, at every different cycle. So it says cycle 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Right? So you want to buy as much Bitcoin as possible from your DCA for the first 100, for the 500 to 300 days, 500, how do I say this? For the 200 days, right? Of that 500 days before the halving, right? And then you somehow need to time your exit towards this time zone, right? So this would be 500 days after the halving usually will mark the top for Bitcoin. And this will definitely be the time that you want to be out of the market. So just DCA out, DCA to exit, pound cost average to exit, guys. So I also put a thumbnail picture of this every time on some of my Buy Bitcoin series, right? So this showcase, we are 805 days away from the next Bitcoin halving event, right? And as I've mentioned earlier, you need to DCA hard 500 days before. So essentially, how many days do you have left, right? So let's say 805 days minus 500 days. Essentially, you've got about 305 days left to really start to stack up your cash, right? Essentially means liquidate some, non-performing assets. I'm selling some of my properties. I'm trying to improve my cash flow, maybe do some reevaluate my mortgage interest rate. I'm trying to shift money so that it gets onto a higher return saving account for the short term. So you guys only have about 305 days to stack up cash. And to put that into perspective, that's about 10 months, guys. So this 10 months, by the time it gets to the 10th month, it will be sometime in November this year, right? That will be the time you should have plenty of cash, plenty of stable coin to redeploy into Bitcoin, right? So hopefully that will be the time when Bitcoin is at its low, right? So that is if we still follow through the 4-year cycle, right? And we need to be, don't shoot me, don't shoot the messenger, right? So there could always be a different event that could play out. Essentially means we kind of go through a super cycle. Bitcoin never drops. Bitcoin doesn't get to the bottom, right? So that will definitely mark the end of the Bitcoin 4-year cycle. But for now, until we can get into another all-time high, right? What the trends say will be we will trend to the low. And Bitcoin, by the time it gets to October, November, should get to the bottom for Bitcoin, right? Even guys, even if we do get some ISM cycle, some liquidity injection, US government suddenly open, and then Jerome Powell's gone, and all of a sudden money just flooded in from gold, silver, and into Bitcoin, we can get a good dead cat bounce, right? Somewhere here, definitely take some profits, right? And then we can still head to the bottom eventually, right? Maybe we wouldn't head to the bottom by November this year. However, we may get to the bottom maybe Q1 next year, right? So I just want to help you guys to visualize how the cycle can potentially play out and be prepared before we get there, right? So being prepared means staying liquid, have stable coin so that you can redeploy into the market when that time comes, and know when to actually exit, like knowing the time frame, right? So very likely we're going to enter here somewhere again, and then we'll have another 2-3 years of bull market, and you guys need to know when to get out. And by that means, by the way, I always hold a hodl bag for Bitcoin. I never sell. And I also hold a swing bag for Bitcoin that I buy low, sell high in this sort of situation, right? So knowing the rhythm of the market, knowing the cycle, the length of the cycle means I know roughly when to enter and when to exit, right? And DCA always work, guys. Okay, so that's kind of what I want to chat about, and this is to address some of the viewers' earlier questions. Okay, so yes, I am still neutral to bearish because this is meant to be a bearish year for Bitcoin, right? 1 year of bear followed by 3 years of bull, guys. So remember that, okay? If this does play out, this isn't the worst of the situation. To me, this is another timing to give me the opportunity to reaccumulate wealth of our lifetime. How often can you reaccumulate Bitcoin when Bitcoin price is ongoingly heading up, essentially to infinity, right? So bear that in mind. Okay, let's move on to fear and greed index. We are back in fear zone, not good. However, it's some sort of improvement, I guess, comparison to yesterday, but on a weekly basis, yeah, we are entering fear and extreme fear pretty soon, right? I'll get to explaining why we're entering extreme fear. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, news that moves Bitcoin price section. Okay, so from the economic calendar, key data, durable goods order for November came in at actual 5.3% versus forecast 4.5%. Damn, that's gonna affect the FOMC decision soon, right? So stronger, definitely the data came out stronger than expected. This is for the period ending November, so you kind of felt it's lagging, right? It doesn't feel that way, but definitely it's lagging. Released on January 26th. So stronger manufacturing signals, less need for the US Fed rate cuts, which could pressure risk asset like Bitcoin. So not good for us. And just a reminder, FOMC meeting will be tomorrow. We should know some outcome, which, by the way, Polymarket already factored in no rate cuts for January. Okay, so other news that are moving Bitcoin price, Saylor, Michael Saylor, his company strategy, continue buying more Bitcoin. So strategy has acquired 2,932 Bitcoin. That's worth well over $264 million. Okay, so that's average 90,000 per Bitcoin. So good for them. I think as long as Saylor strategy continues to buy, I mean, it's always good endorsement, right? Endorsing everyone to just DCA, right? We should rightly just treat Bitcoin as a bank now as opposed to buy low, sell high, because I'll explain in a minute, everyone will eventually have so much exposure onto Bitcoin, and it just becomes natural that we just need to store the value in Bitcoin as opposed to any of the banks. Okay, and other news, Bitcoin holds near 88,000 amid shutdown fears and dollars weakens. So Bitcoin continue to stabilize at around 88,000, defending key support level. I think one thing for sure, U.S. government shutdown will be announced sometime on the 30th. And of course, knowing the fact that US will be supporting Japan through buying more Japanese yen, it's also weakening the dollars, right? So it's not just because of the US government shutdown, but because of the Japanese carry trade implosion, right? So as we know, the US government shutdown from last year, sometime in October, that leads on to the Bitcoin massive liquidation. So US government shutdown would definitely impact the market, no doubt. The last one we had was a record-breaking 43 days, 1.5 months, shutdown in late October onto November the 12th. And so the key takeaway for investors, for you, me, and anyone else, that uncertainty kills liquidity. So during that time, we were really lacking of liquidity. That's because when the government stops paying bills and workers, the economy simply just slows down, and investors, everyone flees the risky bets and move on to safer harbor, right? So I somehow feel Bitcoin will continue to be suppressed, right? Despite the fact that Bitcoin has that, digital gold emphasis. But come on, no one's going to dare to put anything into Bitcoin. Everything will continue to get into gold and silver, right? And what will happen this time? The shutdown will act as a brake on the economy, shaving an estimated 0.1 to 0.2% of GDP growth for every week it lasts. So with federal contracts delayed and 800,000 workers won't get paid, consumer spending will crash, investors move money into traditional safer asset like gold, which saw gains rather than speculative assets. So Bitcoin will continue to be considered as speculative growth asset and risky asset. As a reminder, last time Bitcoin fell 10% from 125,000 to about 113,000 during that panic. And I felt this time round it can fall even bigger, right? So bear that in mind. So maybe a big maybe after all of that, once the government reopens and money starts flowing back in, Bitcoin will rally, or maybe it won't rally because we're going through a bear market. So we'll see how all of that goes. But overall shutdown itself are always negative for everything. Okay, so I think this is just to let you guys know, get ready for some discount if this happens. Okay, so you may also ask me, Jonathan, you just said to us to liquidate as much as possible because Bitcoin is going through a bear market, and why are you asking me to buy right now? Okay, so my point here that I'm making get ready for some discount if this happen, and get ready to buy in. And if you have strong conviction on the asset itself, right? If Bitcoin drops to about 70,000, right? I reckon that's a good buy. That's a very, very good buy. And if you've got the strong conviction to hold Bitcoin for a longer period of time, yes, continue to buy that, right? DCA, guys. I mean, stop the lump sum in. Don't lump sum in when, the market has a lot of uncertainty. But if Bitcoin gets to about 70,000, I reckon that's a good lump sum in DCA too, right? But at the same time, some other asset will also be on a discount too, right? So I'm trying to stack up as much Tesla shares as possible. So that's why for me to liquidate some of the crypto tokens like Ethereum, it probably makes sense because I kind of evaluate Ethereum. I think it somehow reached its peak. And then for me to move some of that gain into Tesla, which can be a faster horse in the coming few more years because they could be more rolled out in terms of that autonomous taxi, and robots and everything else, their energy solutions, right? So somehow I think that for me that makes sense. Okay, so do your own research. I'm not endorsing any other tokens or stocks and shares. I'm just letting you guys know what I'm thinking and how I am trying to shift my investment based upon the rhythm of the market. Okay, so and of course, I think government shutdown, it's up to about 80% chance now. So I think that's very likely that will happen, guys. Metal, gold, and silver continue to make headlines. This time around is due to the drop, of course. I think 1.6 trillion has been wiped out from combined market cap of gold and silver in 4 hours. So not good. But having said that, will this impose a buy the dip opportunity for the holders or for the investors, right? I reckon for this is more of a buy the dip opportunity as opposed to indicating that gold and silver are rotating to something else, right? So yeah, that's it. These are some of the top items that I kind of felt will impact the Bitcoin price in the coming few days. Let's move on to other interesting news section for Bitcoin. This one's pretty interesting. So, US winter storm surprises Bitcoin investors. Okay, so background, a US winter storm. Let me know in the comment section if the winter storm is affecting you guys, right? Because we just had some winter, not storm, but snowstorm, right? So some of us were, snowed in our house for a good couple of days. So let me know in the comment section if you guys are affected on the US winter storm, because it briefly disrupted Bitcoin network by causing some miners to cut power, slowing block production. This happened over the weekend of Jan 25th to 26th. But of course, without major price impact. So I mean, the reason I'm calling this out is essentially to showcase how decentralized Bitcoins is, and in handling the natures of the real world event, right? So yeah, I think it affects the US, but the network continue to progress. And it really showcased some robustness of Bitcoin and the resilience of the network, right? So it never quite crippled the network. It never quite crippled the network. So that's good. And other news that I found quite interesting that I want to cover will be this one. 60% of top US banks building Bitcoin product, right? So institutions want you and me and anyone else to have exposure onto Bitcoin. So that's very good, right? So River report shows 60% of top 25 US banks are developing Bitcoin related products, signaling mainstream integration, right? So this is why I also call out, could this actually be the super cycle that breaks the Bitcoin 4-year cycle? It can be. It can very well be, right? And I think it really does matter to all of us, because knowing that there will be more product, that the adoption of Bitcoin will be extremely fast. You don't even need to go to exchange to buy Bitcoin, having, hardware wallet, yada, yada, yada. Immediately, you can just go in and buy and have everything taken care of. And immediately your money will make more money, right? So, and looking at this, you kind of see the fact that, it's a lot of products that will, it's becoming to have more custody for Bitcoin, right? So people don't have to go through that manual custody anymore. And it's going to be a lot more easier for onboarding. But at the same time, I think what's so attractive of this chart is essentially showing more old money, more wealth money, more wealth will be going into Bitcoin. Okay, it's going to be a more adopted asset. Bitcoin is around 1.7 trillion, right? It's built to take more market cap away from gold, right? So I reckon with more of these products built, will essentially take more of that market cap away from gold. And for now, right, looking at this, a lot of these products are catered for the high net worth individual first, right? And that will be massive amount of money that gets piled into Bitcoin in the longer term, right? So yes, in the longer term, don't have too much hopium that it will affect the price immediately, okay? But longer term wise, the setup, the fundamental for Bitcoin, guys, it's there, right? So whoever watches my video, you guys made the right life choice in investing in Bitcoin. Okay, hopium of the day. Let's move on to hopium of the day. Jim Cramer, often known as the inverse Cramer, he said recently on Twitter, on X, silver can be sold. Your silver. Gold, do not let go. Okay, so we all know inverse Kramers, so indicating that sell gold, essentially. I don't know, to me, this is like my hopium for the day, because, after going through all of this news, after knowing that the US shutdown is so near, this can essentially be like the only hopium that I can bring for you guys. Okay, maybe one more hopium. A Tom Lee's hopium, right? Yeah. Okay, so Tom Lee hopium. Fun strats. Tom Lee said on CNBC that Bitcoin could surge once gold and silver rallies pause as money rotates back to crypto. So this was on the CNBC, and yeah, some more hopium for us to end today's video.
But of course, that is just a leading indicator, right? Because when gold and silver take a break, and in the past, that would lead to a Bitcoin and Ethereum surge afterwards. But of course, that is just a leading indicator, right?
You heard the man. Tom Lee said gold and silver takes a pause and Bitcoin rally after. Okay, so I hope Jim Cramer's and Tom Lee brought some sunshine to you all today, right? As everything looking pretty grim. So overall, past 24 hours, Bitcoin small up to about 88,400, holding support with ETF inflows, which I did not quite get to cover, but it's actually very, very minimal ETF inflow. Let me show you guys. Bitcoin ETF inflow of 6.8 mil. Okay, yesterday. Okay, and fear and greed index, it's showing we might be getting back into fear and maybe possibly extreme fear by the time US government shut down. So that's it for you guys. I hope Jim Cramer and Tom Lee bring some sunshine for us all. And thanks for watching, guys. Remember, drop a like, hit subscribe. Let me know in the comment section where you guys watching from. It's always great to hear from all of you. So thank you. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.